There is a list. A quiet, uncomfortable list. It contains the names of countries that have played in the World Cup, sometimes for decades, sometimes for generations, and never once lifted that golden trophy. And in 2026, when the biggest World Cup in history kicks off across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, that list is about to be tested like never before. You might assume the best teams always win eventually. You might think that talent rises, that excellence gets rewarded, that the cream floats to the top. But the story of football's greatest tournament tells you something far stranger. The teams that never won are not the weak ones. Some of them are the most feared, the most respected, the most dangerous teams on the planet. And that gap between greatness and glory turns out to be one of the most revealing things in all of sport. So what is actually happening when a great team keeps falling short? Is it pressure, luck, tactics, or is something deeper going on? Something rooted in the psychology of expectation, the neuroscience of choking, and the brutal mathematics of a single elimination tournament? Start with the Netherlands. No country in World Cup history illustrates this paradox more painfully. The Dutch have reached the final 3 times, 1974, 1978, and 2010. 3 finals, 0 trophies. They invented total football, a system so revolutionary that coaches still teach it today. Johan Cruyff, widely considered one of the greatest players who ever lived, played in 2 of those finals and never won. The 1974 final against West Germany remains one of the most studied matches in football history. The Netherlands scored before a German player even touched the ball and still lost. 3 times the world watched the Dutch arrive at the very last step and stumble. Then there is Portugal. For most of football's modern era, Portugal existed in the shadow of one extraordinary player, and even he could never quite get them over the line in a World Cup. The country produced Eusebio, the Black Panther, who in 1966 finished as the tournament's top scorer and led Portugal to 3rd place in what many consider the most underrated World Cup performance in history. Decades later, a new era arrived. The expectations grew even larger, and the trophy remained somewhere else. Then there is the mathematical reality no one likes to talk about. Sports psychologist Cyan Beilock at the University of Chicago has spent years studying why experts fail under pressure. Her research shows that when the stakes rise to their highest point, the brain begins to monitor its own performance too carefully. The automatic systems that produce skilled movement get interrupted by conscious oversight. You start thinking about what you are doing instead of just doing it. In athletes, this creates a millisecond hesitation. In a penalty shootout, which has ended the dreams of so many great teams, that hesitation is everything. Belgium provides the most modern example of this phenomenon. From roughly 2014 to 2022, Belgium fielded what football journalists called the Golden Generation. Kevin De Bruyne, Eden Hazard, Romelu Lukaku, Thibaut Courtois, Jan Vertonghen. By FIFA rankings, they spent more time ranked number 1 in the world than any other nation during that era. Number 1 in the world. And they never made a World Cup final. They exited at the quarterfinal stage, twice, when the eyes of the world were watching most closely. Researcher Geir Jordet of the Norwegian School of Sports Sciences studied penalty shootouts across major tournaments and found something striking. Players who pause longest before their run-up, who show the visible signs of overthinking, miss at a significantly higher rate. The body knows what to do, the mind keeps interrupting, and the higher the stage, the louder that interruption becomes. But here is where the story gets genuinely strange. Because not all of these nations are victims of pressure. Some of them are victims of something much older, the structure of competition itself. A knockout tournament does not simply crown the best team. It crowns the team that was best on a specific sequence of days, against a specific sequence of opponents, under specific weather, injury, and refereeing conditions that no one can control. Nicholas Nassim Taleb, the scholar of probability and randomness, has written extensively about how single elimination formats amplify luck to a degree that most observers refuse to acknowledge. In a best-of-7 series, the better team wins roughly 80% of the time. In a single knockout match, that advantage collapses dramatically. The World Cup is 7 knockout matches in a row. The probability of the best team winning all 7 is far lower than your intuition tells you. This means that some of the teams on this list, the ones who have come closest without winning, are not failures. They are statistical victims of a format designed to produce drama rather than accuracy. The Netherlands in 1974, Belgium in 2018, Portugal in 1966. These teams may have been the best in the world at the time. The tournament simply did not have the structure to prove it. And yet, this logic brings you back to something uncomfortable, because there is another group of countries on this list that have never even reached a final. Countries with enormous footballing cultures, vast talent pools, and passionate supporters who have been waiting not for decades, but for generations. And 2026 is the first World Cup with 48 teams, the largest in history, which means more nations will qualify than ever before, more games will be played, and the mathematical window for an upset has never been wider. Think about what that means for a country like Morocco. In 2022, Morocco became the first African nation to reach the semi-final of a World Cup. They eliminated Belgium, Spain, and Portugal. They played with a defensive discipline and counter-attacking precision that had analysts scrambling to redesign their mental models of what African football could be. They lost to France in the semi-final in a match that remained goalless for over an hour. One moment, one lapse, and the greatest run in African football history ended not with a defeat, but with a single crack in a nearly perfect wall. In 2026, Morocco will be at home. Not literally. The tournament is in North America, but geographically closer than any World Cup in their history, playing in front of a diaspora that stretches across the continent. The psychological literature on home advantage is clear. Research by Tobias Doman published in the Journal of Sports Economics found that even crowd proximity and familiarity with conditions creates measurable performance advantages, particularly in tight, decisive moments. Morocco will not be playing in front of their own crowd, but they will feel closer to something than they ever have before. There is a category that exists beyond tactical analysis and beyond psychology, and that is the category of time. The teams that have never won carry something their opponents do not. They carry an accumulation of near misses, of penalty heartbreaks, of goals disallowed by margins measured in centimeters, of tournaments ended by injuries to players who were supposed to be untouchable. That accumulation creates something behavioral scientists call a counterfactual mindset. The brain's tendency to rehearse what almost happened, to build vivid alternate histories, to feel losses more sharply than wins. In some athletes, this becomes paralysis. In others, and this is the critical distinction, it becomes fuel. The psychological research of Laura Cray at UC Berkeley on counterfactual thinking shows that near misses consistently produce one of two outcomes: withdrawal or intensified motivation. The difference, her research suggests, lies in whether the individual or group interprets the near miss as evidence of fundamental inadequacy or as proof of how close they are to the edge of something real. The Netherlands in 2022 reached the quarterfinals. Belgium's golden generation has aged out, replaced by a new group with something the old one never had: the freedom of low expectation. Portugal continues to build around younger players who were not alive for the last era of heartbreak, and Morocco stands at a genuinely unprecedented moment in the history of African football, carrying not just a nation's hope, but an entire continent's. In 2026, the list will either grow shorter or grow longer. One of these countries will finally lift the trophy, or more of them will add another chapter to the longest-running story in world sport. Either way, they will play in front of the largest audiences ever assembled for a sporting event. They will play in the knowledge that the whole world is watching, and the whole world, it turns out, is watching for exactly this reason. There is a list of countries that have played the World Cup for generations and never won. You assumed that meant they were not good enough. But it turns out the list contains some of the most gifted teams in football history. And the real story has always been about what happens to greatness under pressure, in a format designed for drama rather than justice, on the one stage where everything is decided in 90 minutes or less. The 2026 World Cup begins. The list still exists. And somewhere on it, a country is about to cross their name off forever.